Welcome to another episode of the Layman's Guide to the World Cup. I'm your host, Henry, and let's get to it because we're on to Group F, which is, I think, one of the strongest groups in the World Cup with a lot of exciting teams. So there's a lot of storylines at play here, with the first being the Netherlands. Netherlands, I think, is the team out of any team that's ever played in the World Cup. It's the best team that's never won the World Cup. They've fallen short so many times. They've been in the final for the 74, 78, and the 2010 World Cup. They are constantly in the semifinals of the World Cup. They just fall short. They just constantly are falling short for some reason, some way. So, can they make it happen this time around? That's always the question, because they're always a threat. At the last World Cup, they got knocked down in the quarterfinals against the eventual winners, Argentina, which was a very controversial game because of refereeing decisions that were a little too favorited towards Argentina. Give you a little insider knowledge. I've never been a big fan of Argentina and the Messi hype train, which just happens to Ronaldo too, but I think even more so for Messi and Argentina. They get a lot of calls thrown their way that are a little suspicious, and it felt like that in the 2022 World Cup, where it happened over and over again, where there's some suspicious calls that would eventually lead to them winning. So, but Netherlands, at the last Euros, they got third place. So they're coming in, which was 2 years ago. So they're coming in, being one of the strongest teams in Europe. And they went 6 wins, 2 losses or 2 draws in their group. And the team who know those in that group is Poland. But they are. Can this finally be the one? I don't know. Like I said in the previous episode, I think there's some of the strongest teams we've ever seen in just this one World Cup. I think everyone's on their A game, and it's really going to be about who slips up. Because I don't consider the Netherlands in my top 4 to win it. But also at the same time, I can see them in the final. It can happen. So the question is, can they follow through? Can this finally be the one? But they have some really good players. You have Virgil van Dijk, who plays for Liverpool. He's won the Ballon d'Or, which is a prestigious title for the best player of that year. And he'll be holding up the center of the park. And this is likely to be his last World Cup. Then you have Frankie de Jong, who will be holding in the center mid position for this team. He's 29. He's been through 2 World Cups, and he's very experienced now. He plays for Barcelona. He's always a starter, one of their preferred players. And you have Cody Gakpo in their attack. He didn't have the best season for Liverpool, but he always shows up for the Netherlands, and he was a very important player for their Euros run. So this system fits him better. So what kind of attack is he going to do? He plays for Liverpool. So, but then the question is, where are they going to finish? I think anything but a quarterfinal appearance is a failure in their book. Like, that's how elite. I think Netherlands is a more elite team going in this tournament and should have higher expectations than Germany, just on current performances and how they play in this system and their players. I think there's more individually talented players on Germany, but on the Netherlands, they play more as a team, which is sometimes more important when we're talking about these things. So, anything but quarterfinals is a failure. And they're going to be one of those teams that's straddling those quarters, semis. And like I said, I can even see them making a final. But I think being realistic and really based on the draw. That's always the hard part with all these predictions is how does the draw work. I think semis. That's a possibility here for this team. And as someone of Dutch heritage, I'm excited to watch them. Also, if you're here in Houston, they're playing in Houston. If you want, they have the iconic Orange March to their games. So if you want to go down to Rice on the day of their game, you can walk 2.5 miles with a giant sea of orange and the bus and the chanting and the excitement as they make it all the way to NRG. It'll be a really cool experience. They brought their bus over from the Netherlands, which is exciting. So you'll get to see that. Even if you watch the broadcast, they'll show some imagery of it before the game and the pre-show. So it's always a really cool thing. Next up is Japan, the Blue Samurai. Japan is this team that's always on the cusp of making it to elite. And I think they're the Asian team that, because like usually the big boys of soccer are either from South America or Europe. And Japan's always that team trying to make it into that bubble. And it'll be the first team outside of those two continents that can make it in that bubble. So can they do that this time? With probably the most talented team on paper, even though they're missing Mitama, this could be the year for Japan. Last World Cup they made the round of 16 and got knocked out, but they're in the group with Germany, and Germany got knocked out in that group because of Japan. So they're a team that plays so unified. I think I talked about in the first episode we did was Asian teams. They're known for their unification in systems, and Japan exemplifies that to the largest degree. But then they have this example of like this systems that they play in, but then they have star players to put in this unified system as well, and then that takes that system to the next level. So last AFC Cup in 23, they sadly got knocked out in quarters, kind of falling off the pressure after the height and the excitement of the 22 World Cup. They're always one of the most exciting teams to watch. So I'll throw that out there as well about Japan. But they won their group for qualifying. This is the group that Australia was in and Saudi Arabia was in, and they won that group pretty cleanly. But their big three players to watch is Kubo out of Real Sociedad. He's a kid that went into the Madrid system, and Madrid decided to sell him. And now for Real Sociedad, though, he's their star player, which is fun. His coach is American for that team, and this historic team in Spain that's usually has a top half finish, and he's the engine that makes them work, and he's one of the engines here for the Japanese team too, and he's still relatively young. But then next to him will be Endo, who plays for Liverpool. He is their kind of like the guy that tidies everything up and kind of controls the tempo. He's one of those players that when you see him on the field, you're like, who is this guy? He's always underrated, and he plays in a team like Liverpool where he's really an unsung hero for them when he comes in, and he does show up for big games when needed. And the final person who I think will be a very important piece is their goalkeeper, and that's Zion Suzuki, who plays for Parma. U.S. wouldn't have a goalkeeping situation if we were able to recruit him. Zion Suzuki has an American father and a Japanese mother, and he decided to play for Japan because that's kind of where he grew up in his identity. But we had the ability to recruit him. It's just Japan has this rigorous system where, like, if you have a Japanese citizenship and you pick a citizenship of another country to represent them, you have to forfeit your Japanese citizenship, which we don't do that with the United States. But he didn't want to lose that and especially with his identity with Japan. But we wouldn't have the goalkeeping problem we have with the United States if we were able to recruit him. We were trying to recruit him, but that fell through. He is definitely going to be moving this summer. There's quite a few top Italian teams that want him. He's on that verge of becoming an elite goalkeeper, and this World Cup could really make that happen for him because he's young. He's in his mid-20s. So for goalkeepers, if you don't know, they usually play until they're 40 years old easily. Goalkeepers usually aren't in their prime until they're 30 at least. So if a player already shows promise as a goalkeeper early on, those are the people that become elite, which is cool. But I think round of 16, anything but round of 16 is a failure, especially with the level of quality in this World Cup. They can make it to the round of 16. And I think for them to cross that bridge to become elite, they have to make it to the quarters. They have to. I think they can do it. It just really is the team they're facing going to play the best on that day, and if they can step up to the challenge, we'll have to find out. So that's Japan. Next we have Sweden, which is kind of this team that's also kind of on that, the verge of making. It's kind of like a Switzerland, except for definitely Sweden goes through its cycles. It has some of its iconic players like Zlatan Ibrahimovic or Henrik Larsson, Kim Kallström. They've had a lot of really good players over the years. It's just they've never been able to cross that line to a European elite compared to some of the other countries. So kind of been in that Swiss realm. I think Switzerland's a better team than them, but you'd be surprised with them. They did make it to be second in the World Cup in 1958, but that's been a long time. They weren't in the last World Cup, and they didn't make it to the Euros. So the only reason why they made it this far, so they got last place in the World Cup qualifying group, which had the Netherlands, had Poland in it. But because of their Nations League rankings, which that's another thing of rankings, we're not going to get into that. That's going to be a long process. They got to move on to the playoff tournaments to feel like the last team, and they played the Ukraine, beat Ukraine, and then they beat Poland in the final and made it on to the World Cup. So they fought their way here, and Ukraine and Poland are not slouch teams. I would say they're teams that are on a similar level as them. So they fought and got here. So can they make something of this tournament? It's going to be hard to get second place in this group, but they'll be fighting for that third place, hopefully. But they have some good players, specifically their attack. They have Alexander Isak from Liverpool, who's had an interesting season. He's been injured half the season, but he's definitely a striker that can cause problems. You have Anthony Alenga, who plays for Newcastle. He's a winger, and he can cause a lot of problems. He came out of the Manchester United Academy. Manchester United represent. He's definitely a player I think we should have kept on to, but he's shown his talent in the Premier League as an attacker. And then you have Victor Gyökeres, who plays for Arsenal as their striker, has won the Premier League, had a solid season. So can he translate it here? Between these three, I think any defense would be fearful of that attacking group and would have to lock them down. So that's where Sweden, that's their strength. Defense is going to be shaky, their midfield. So it's whether or not they can supply that attack to take advantage of it. That's going to be the question here. But for them, failures being grouped, I think they can make that third place. I think they can make it to the round of 32, but anything higher than that, I don't know. It really just depends on how well that attack is going to be clicking. That's the question here with them. And finally, you have Tunisia, the Eagles of Carthage, as their nickname is. The best they've done in a World Cup is being grouped. And they were grouped in the last World Cup. But I think they fall in this group of African teams that their success in Africa does not translate well to their success on the World Cup stage. So they're definitely one of those teams that's like that. And I don't think they're a slouch or anything like that. They had a really good World Cup qualifying. They went 9-1. So they have some. They don't have like these big standout players. They have some from like Hannibal Medjabri. Plays for Burnley. Burnley got relegated in the Premier League this season, but he's a Manchester United academy product. He's a solid player. And then you also have Elige Shaqiri, who plays for Eintracht Frankfurt in the Bundesliga, which is usually a top team in the Bundesliga. So there's some players, and I think it's just whether or not they can translate it. So they'll be fighting for third place, I think, with Sweden. Will that translate to the round of 32? But I think round of 32 is the best they can do. I don't see it. They're not one of the strongest African teams. They're a good African team, but just historically, just their success in Africa has never translated over to World Cup success. So that'll be the question with them. So this is Group F of the World Cup. It's a very strong group. I think all the games are going to be good games in this group, especially Japan Germany is going to be or Japan Netherlands. It's going to be a game that is going to be fantastic. So I'm excited to watch that. That might be one of my favorite games of the whole group stage right there. So there's going to be a lot of good games in this group. So enjoy it. The Netherlands-Sweden game is going to be here in Houston. So if you want to take advantage, go for it. Either way, it's going to be an exciting time with this group. I'll see you tomorrow for our next group. I just lost my page. With both Belgium and Egypt are in the next group in Group G, so it'll be a little bit of an exciting group there. Not as top tier as these last two, but it's a solid group nonetheless. I will see you tomorrow.